I just love small towns in America. There's something unique about every one of them. Hi, welcome to another episode of History Hunters. Today I decided to concentrate on a town you probably have never heard of. It's a little town in Central California called Waterford, California, with its roots dating back to the 1850s. I'm very familiar with it. I lived here for 3 decades, raised my family here, was elected to the city council here. Now, the reason I picked Waterford is about 13 years ago, I wrote a historical book and I collected a lot of images of this town through the years, starting from the 1880s. Let's just do a little then and now comparison. I'll stand in the same spot that photographers stood in and try to duplicate the shots today, just to show you how a little town will change over the course of about 100 years. Before I start this then and now comparison, I wanted to focus on how this town originated back in 1857 when a man named William Baker came out here from Arkansas. This town doesn't have a cemetery, and I need to go upstream where most of the dead of this community were buried. Roberts Ferry Cemetery, it's about 7 miles up the road, where the founder of this town is buried. That's a good place to start out to explain all about Waterford, California. So join me on this episode of History Hunters. One of the most underappreciated aspects of this city is the fact that it's located on the Tuolumne River, flows out of the Sierra Nevada. And about 1890, there was a railroad that came through here and went all the way from Stockton to a community called Montpelier. I'm standing approximately where the railroad trestle was, and it ran right through here. As you can see, they took that out a long time ago. There was a second bridge. The second bridge was approximately right here, and until a few years ago it stood, and they decided to replace it with this bridge here, a new modern bridge that spans the Tuolumne River between Waterford on this side and the town of Hickman on that side. And in between is a gorgeous river channel, the Tuolumne River. When they blew up the railroad trestle, the whole town came out here. It was quite a spectacle. Everybody wanted to see this old historic trestle going down in a big explosion and a scrap pile. All right, so I've made my way up here to the Roberts Ferry Cemetery. It's a cemetery outside of a little establishment called Roberts Ferry. Actually, it started out as Horr's Ranch, H-O-R-R'(S) Ranch. The owner of that ranch actually split Tuolumne County in two and made Stanislaus County out of it. And this is the cemetery that contains the dead of that community. I always enjoy coming to these little cemeteries. They are like historical nuggets. But I'm here specifically to find the grave of William Wilkerson Baker. He was a native of Berryville, Arkansas, and he came out here to California in 1857. He homesteaded about 160 acres south of the Tuolumne River. And here is the Baker family plot. It's very nice to see that they fixed his marker because it had been damaged quite a bit. Hope you don't mind me going in here so I can get a view of his grave. William W. Baker, like he died October 2nd, 1885. He was just 51 years old, and I understand that he was elected county treasurer that election. And before he could take office, he passed away. You might be surprised when I show you his photo. He kind of looked like Abraham Lincoln. Probably a lot of guys did back then. He came out here to California in 1857 by wagon train and homesteaded 160 acres on the south side of the river. He was just 23 years old. He journeyed back to his hometown in Arkansas, where he married Carolyn Pinkston, who is buried right here, wife of W.W. Baker. She died January 4th, 1889. So she outlasted her husband. She was just 58. Now, on the way out in December 1857, Carolyn gave birth to twin girls named Belle and Alice near the California-Nevada border. They later built a home on the bluff and started a ferry and built a store in Waterford in 1862, and the town was called Bakersville. They had a number of children, many who died at a very young age, this being one of them, Ida Mae Baker. Here she was just 17 years old, daughter of W.W. and C. Baker. She died April 24th, 1891. Here's one of their daughters right here, Alice Hayter. She was the one who was born near the border. She married this man, John Hayter, who was a Civil War veteran, Company H of the 2nd Missouri, LA. He died in 1926. This is a pretty cool cemetery. One of the things that you notice when you come out to these cemeteries is how young people were when they died. In fact, if you see somebody that died in their 80s and 90s, that was quite an accomplishment back then because they didn't have the medical care that we have today and everything else. I want to highlight over here, this was the town librarian, Nora Ballard. She lived from 1881 to 1964. The library is named after her in Waterford. Here's the Pinkstons, who are all interrelated to the Bakers. If you can get past the din of the traffic up Highway 132 there, it's a pretty quiet place. The river's just right over there. It's within a stone's throw. Of course, I can't throw a stone that far. Now, I knew this gentleman here, William Mallory. He was the founder of the Robert's Ferry Nut Company, and I do remember going to Disneyland about 20 years ago, and I saw his product there being sold in one of the stores. I also saw his name at the Crystal Cathedral courtyard. So now I'm going to head back to Waterford and show you where the Bakers lived and where that town originally started. Here is one of those clamper markers, this one established in 1969 here alongside of the road. The Highway 132. Waterford was formerly Bakersville, founded by W.W. Baker in 1862. You already know that because we gave you one up on it. Town surveyed in 1868 and named Waterford. Ferry operated until 1891 when the first bridge was built. Post office established June 20th, 1872. 12 loyal citizens cast 12 votes for town as county seat in 1871, and it never did become the county seat. Town moved from here when the railroad came through in 1890. Now that is pretty cool. How many of you people stop for these and read them when you're traveling down the road? Now there's a good reason why I'm holding up this book at this location. It's a book that I wrote in 2010. It has on the cover this beautiful Waterford Hotel, which was located right here on this now barren piece of ground. It's sad to see history go like that. Now, it was right on this corner that the White Oak School once sat, high on top of the bluff overlooking the town side of Waterford. Can you imagine? All of that's gone. The Baker family lived in this home built on C Street in 1869 and which still stands today all these years later. The house has the original front door used by the first family in town over 150 years ago. In this aerial photograph, likely taken from a biplane in the 1920s, you can see the railroad trestle spanning high above the Tuolumne River. If we follow the river upstream a ways, we'll also see the 1915 steel truss bridge that connected North Appling Road on the Waterford side and South Appling Road on the Hickman side. The bridge was located close to the fledgling town of Bakersville, seen here in this photo. In case you're wondering, the name of the town was later changed to Waterford. In the beginning, a ferry like this one, located near LaGrange, was the only way to cross the Tuolumne River. When the automobile came along, so did the steel truss bridge, which served the community until about the mid-1960s, when a cement bridge was constructed next to the railroad trestle. When the old bridge came down in 1964, the decorative approaches remained in place, and they are memorialized by a plaque on the Waterford end. In 1890, the Southern Pacific Railroad came to town, which prompted the business district to relocate to this area, which was called Front Street and now named F Street. The original depot, seen here, which served both freight and passengers, was constructed in this area in 1896, approximately where these apartments were built. When the depot burned to the ground in 1921, it was replaced by this modest depot, which remained in place until the 1980s. Then it was moved to Big Bear Park. In case you're wondering what happened to the second train depot in Waterford, it's over here. It's sitting off to the side of Highway 132, serving no useful purpose today. Now, this railroad depot was later placed into what was called Big Bear Park. It was a recreation park here in Waterford. And once that park dismantled for a housing subdivision, this depot was moved a little bit down the road here where it sits. And now, as I promised, here's a then and now comparison to show you the changes of Waterford, California, some close to a span of a century. I attempted to stand close to the position of the original photographer. So I want to thank you so much for getting to the end of this video about Waterford, California and its history. You know, in the past, Waterford hasn't received the respect that it probably should have, given the fact that it has such a rich history. And I would love it if you could just leave us a comment. What did you think of the before and after pictures? And what did you think about how the town looks now compared to the way it looked then? And if you could just give us a thumbs up. And if you haven't subscribed to History Hunters, we would appreciate that as well. Thank you so much. So I decided to come by here and pay my respects to a young man by the name of Alan Storer. He was killed tragically a year after I graduated from high school. I remember seeing him in the hallways of the high school. He was kind of the hall monitor. He was the guy who collected the attendance slips. And on November 12, 1980, he was killed in a traffic accident on 132, just right there in town. Way too young. He was just 18 years of age. Didn't even have a chance to live.